Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I thought I'd do a different kind of topic. I'm going to look at 10 singles which at the time disappointed me on release. Doesn't mean it disappointed you or the general public. A lot of them were pretty big hits, and in some cases they were kind of viewed as a kind of comeback single, no less. But anyway, I'm just giving you my personal opinion here. Some of these tracks, as I'll go through them, I'll say I've mellowed my opinion over the years, or I've got to like them or whatever, but I'm talking about my feeling at the time. And I've got 10 singles to talk about, and I haven't dared to put them in order, so they're in alphabetical order. So number one, we've got an Abba single from 1979 from this album. It wasn't the first single off the album. The first single was Chiquitita. But this song, the title song, Voulez-Vous, I think it was a double A-side with Angel Eyes. And I quite liked Angel Eyes, but I remember being quite annoyed by Voulez-Vous, and I thought that Abba had just jumped on the disco bandwagon. And I was a little bit pissed off with them for doing that, and I thought the song was a bit annoying, not one of their best melodies. They even went to the trouble of employing some kind of professional disco musicians to play on the track. And having said that, so at the time I didn't like the single. Now I think that album actually is probably, track for track, their strongest album. But I still don't particularly like the title track. It's somewhat grown on me over the years, but I think there's far greater stuff on that album. But that just left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth about Abba just going with the trend. Albeit quite successfully. The single got to number 3, I think. Number 2, I don't even have in my collection, because I think I stopped buying AC/DC for those about to rock. But I was still listening to songs when they came on the radio, and there's a song which I'm going to talk about now called Thunderstruck, which was quite a big hit, and a lot of people think it's one of their favourite AC/DC tracks. I just can't see what the merit in the song is at all. I mean, I think it's got no decent guitar riff. It's not even a particularly good rocker. It's just a boring track for me. And I'm sorry, all you Thunderstruck fans out there. And I know a few friends of mine who like that track. I just think if you put it on a par with AC/DC at their peak, sort of 74 to 1981, then it's not on the same level for me. Number 3, I didn't buy Let's Dance, the album at the time from Bowie, and this was the lead-off single. And it's not a bad track, and actually, as it turned out, probably the best track on the album, but that's not saying a huge deal. I remember being let down by that track, thinking it was, again, a little bit disco-y, a little bit if you can't beat 'em, join 'em kind of thing. And compared to those singles from Scary Monsters, such as Ashes to Ashes and Fashion, I just thought it, and that whole period of Bowie, when he was in his so-called Berlin period, or, recording those late 70s albums, I thought he had an aura of mystery about him, and then here he is just being mainstream, and actually it would get worse after this for the rest of the decade, and Bowie would become increasingly more commercial. And I'm sorry to all you Let's Dance fans out there. I know it's my brother's favourite Bowie song ever, so horses for courses. Anyway, not my favourite. Don't even have the album to this day. Number 4, I'm going to choose the single from this album, or one of the singles from this album, 1985, Brothers in Arms. I'm going to pick on the single Money for Nothing, which was quite a big hit, and it features Sting on sort of backing vocals and stuff. But I just thought this song was so generic and just trying to be a catchy radio-friendly hit with these stupid words about microwave ovens, and the riff at the beginning particularly reminded me of Jumping Jack Flash. I thought that's a rip-off. I wasn't particularly amused or entertained by the words. I want my MTV, what's that supposed to mean? I mean, I guess it's a dig at 80s consumerism, but it just didn't do anything for me, and I think it's one of their weaker tracks, although a lot of people like it because they sent it into the top 5, or pretty high in the top 5. Number 5, we've got George Harrison's comeback single from 1987, Got My Mind Set on You. This is a cover song written by Rudy Clark, which he'd known from the 50s, quite an obscure song, and he made it his own and got all the way to number 2 in the UK, and a similar number in the US, number 2, if not number 1. So it was very successful, and he was doing interviews left, right and centre, and he even recorded at least 2 videos, if not 3. But I just remember getting it home and putting it on and hearing those 80s drums at the beginning, with, I think it's Jim Keltner using a drum machine, I read. And I just thought the whole thing was too commercial for my liking, and trying to rely on this hook of the chorus, and obviously it took off because the public loved it, or a lot of the people loved it because they bought it in their truckloads. But I think there's better stuff on the album that followed, and I've never really gone back to this song. It's one I tend to avoid listening to where possible. Number 6, we've got Wonderful Christmas Time from Paul McCartney, and now this song over the years I've grown to quite like it, but I do remember at the time, first of all, my friends all hated it, and so I was on the defensive from the word go. And then, secondly, it was pretty hard to defend some of those lyrics, the choir of children sing their song, ding dong, ding dong, and, that chorus, simply having a wonderful Christmas time. I don't mind it, and it's heartfelt and all that, but I do have a feeling that if Cliff Richard had recorded the same song, I would absolutely detest it. So, because it's McCartney, we give him a pass. Well, I give him a pass, and I think it's quite a pleasant listen, and I do appreciate the synthesizers on it and the slightly strange chord changes. But at the time, it was a pretty big disappointment, although I was happy to see it get to number 6. Number 7, we've got the lead-off single from the Rolling Stones' comeback after 3 years of fighting with each other, following the Dirty Work album, and after which they both did, Mick and Keith both did solo projects, and then came back in '89 with this comeback album. But the lead single, Mixed Emotions, was just mundane rocker which did nothing for me, and it's got nothing classic about it. It's just a run-of-the-mill single, and it did reasonably in the charts, but I don't have a good word to say about it. I would actually use the word boring for that particular song. There's better stuff on the album when it came out, but that's not a song I turn to at all these days. Number 8, or at the time for that matter. Number 8, we've got the song from Paul Simon's Graceland album, and it's the single You Can Call Me Al, which I just find annoying, and with this horrible riff, or it's quite catchy, I suppose, but it's got these annoying words about how he used to call his wife Betty and she called him Al as a nickname. I'm not really interested in that kind of lyric, and I guess he's trying to be amusing, but doesn't do anything for me. I think it's by far the weakest track on Graceland. All the stuff he does with Ladysmith Black Mambazo and all the other African musicians is far more interesting. I think the African musicians were on this track, which make it slightly more tolerable, but on the whole, it's one of the low points of Paul Simon's career, singles-wise, for me. Number 9, we've got the Supertramp lead-off single from Brother Where You Bound, which was the first album post Roger Hodgson, and obviously we were not expecting it to be great without Roger, and it wasn't great. It had a couple of good songs. The title track's quite interesting mood piece, quite long, ambitious piece, which was actually slated for the previous album, Famous Last Words, but I don't think they could agree on it, so it got held back for this album. But this song, Cannonball, a kind of minor hit for the band, and Rick Davies is on piano singing his normal vocal quite well. But this song, I think they made a point of actually seeing if they could record a whole song on one chord, which I think is the chord of E. I seem to remember, I can't remember. But it basically, that does make the song quite monotonous. And even though it's got that horn line towards the end to try and cheer it up, it's a little bit too little too late. And it's just not got the magic of all those previous Supertramp singles, all of which are just magical. And I'm talking about all of their singles from Dreamer through to Breakfast in America. They're just all brilliant. And this one, unfortunately, was the beginning of their not-so-good period after Roger left. Now, to round it off in alphabetical order, we got Steve Winwood, beginning with W, so he goes last on the list, and the song is the lead-off single of Higher Love, which was a big album for him commercially, and saw his comeback commercially, really, because Talking Back to the Night wasn't particularly successful, and a single after that in '83, Your Silence Is Your Song, wasn't particularly successful. Ark of a Diver had sold pretty well, but this one got him onto the... I was in America when it came out, and it was at the time of MTV when everyone was obliged. Even Dylan was putting out videos shortly after this, or around the same time as this. It all started in '83, I think, MTV in earnest. And so Steve Winwood jumped on this MTV bandwagon, recorded this video of him prancing around, and I just don't like this song. I tried to listen to the album the other day, couldn't get beyond side one, but I do quite like Take It As It Comes, the second track, because it's got some nice guitar from Steve. But Higher Love is just a commercial single, and it was a hit, so I guess it succeeded in its objective. But I just does nothing for me as a song. Give me While You See a Chance or Valerie any day. So that was 10 songs which disappointed me on release, and some of which I've altered my opinion of over the years, some of which I haven't. But anyway, it's only my opinion, not to be taken seriously. Thank you for watching. See you next time.